All right, well, I trust you did well on your test. Students in here did very, very well. I was very pleased with how they did. We did have one perfect in the class. That was Luciana, so great job, Luciana. And several students really close. So some of you are maybe kicking yourselves right now. As I mentioned, Jalen's like, me. But I did mention on the introduction video last time that you're not going to need your math books. So students in here don't have their math books with them for the most part. But what they do have is a supplement, and you should have this as well. If you don't have this, you're going to have a really hard time following along. So make sure you have a financial literacy supplement. It looks kind of like, as somebody else pointed out, this looks like our dreaded speed drill booklets. Yeah, except it's thicker. And, and it says financial literacy supplement. So anyway, make sure you have that. We're going to be talking through some really practical math over the next several weeks. Really the rest of this quarter, talking about some really practical math, stuff you just need to know because in a few years, you're going to be using it. Some of you are going to be working jobs in just a few years from now. You're 7th graders now. Some of you in a few years will be 10th graders. You'll be old enough to go get maybe a part-time job after school, make a little money. Some of you set aside for college. Maybe some of you set aside to buy a car. How do you handle money? Later on, as you hit adulthood, right? Guys especially, you need to be the leaders in your home. You need to be competent with money. Ladies, ideally, God blesses you with a husband who knows what he's doing, right? But what if that doesn't happen? Or what if, and if this is the case in some relationships, the woman is better with finance, and so she handles the finance in the home. Nothing necessarily wrong with that, right? So you want to be competent with money. We're going to talk about all kinds of different things. If you look down through the table of contents, we're going to start just by talking about income, how you make money. Then we're going to talk about bank accounts. How do the bank accounts actually work? And we're going to practice with different things there. Then we're going to talk about how to manage expenses, planning a budget. You'll learn about something called amortized loans. Then we talk about taxes. Not favorite subject, but we'll talk about taxes because you need to know how that works. And that'll kind of wrap up the first half of the class. We'll take a test after that over all that stuff. We'll have some quizzes here and there throughout as well. Then after that, we'll talk about insurance. You see commercials for it all the time. How does insurance actually work? Not every little nitty-gritty detail. You're in 7th grade, okay? My objective isn't to teach you every last possible thing you need to know. I mean, there's consumer math classes for that later in high school, but at least you'll know enough to be functional. You'll at least be enough to know how to ask questions when you get to that age. Talk a little bit about business math for 2 reasons. You might be business owners one day, right? See Kirsten running her own store and making money, or Griffin running a shop and doing what, right? So Luciana ruling the world. Jalen's pointing over to her, right? But the point is, you might be business people one day, but even if you're not, knowing how businesses operate financially will help you as a consumer to understand things as well. So we'll talk a little bit about business math, not a whole lot, and then just a little bit on investments, right? How do the rich people continue to get richer? How could you get in on that action? Well, for number one, you'll learn you have to have a little money up front, but we'll talk about investments, just a couple basic ones. Again, not all the details, just enough so you have a basic understanding of how things work. But we need to start with where it all starts. None of this discussion matters if you don't have money in the first place, right? So going back to your part-time job, let's talk a little bit about lesson 1 as you turn to page 1 in your supplements, salary, wages, and tips. Now, this section is going to have a lot more terms than what you're used to in a math class, okay? So you need to make sure you keep track of terms. Someone asked a moment ago, can we highlight in our supplement? Yes, absolutely. Now, I've tried to help you out by bolding some things. You're used to that in Abeka anyway, right? Bold terms, bold facts. So I've tried to bold the most important things for you, but let's go and look through lesson number 1. First term you see there is the term income. Income. Income refers to any money that a person makes doing some kind of job. So you do a job for somebody, you offer them some service, you make money. You sell them something, you make money. That's what income is, right? Income is simply money that you make. Now there's 2 ways income works. Oftentimes, there is the person who actually does the work, and then there's the person they work for. Now, there are some people who are called self-employed. How many have heard that term before? Self-employed. That means you're your own boss, right? And there's a lot to be said for that kind of thing, right? You set your own hours, you set the vision. You don't really have issues with labor because you always agree with yourself. But most people aren't self-employed in America. Most people in America work for somebody. So Joel goes out and he's looking for a job, and Ben is hiring. Ben has his own business and he needs people to work for him, and Joel needs a job, so they agree to work. Joel says, I'll work for you. How much will you pay me? He says, how much will you pay me? He says, that sounds good. And so now Ben is called an employer. You see that term there. An employer is a person who hires other people. That's the boss man. Okay? And that's the person that, on a lower level, so to speak, that's the person you're trying to please. Keep your boss happy. Because if the boss doesn't get happy, what happens to you?
Fired.
You're fired, as Donald Trump loved to say. All right, you're fired if you don't keep the boss happy. Now, ultimately, as Christians, who are we really trying to please, class?
God.
God, right? So if there was an employer who were to be displeased because you're doing right, and you were to be fired for doing right, the Bible says, blessed are you when men persecute you and revile you, right? So ultimately, you make sure you're pleasing God, right? But the Bible also says when a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him, right? So if you're working hard to please God, you will please your boss, right? I don't work to please Pastor Hahn and Mr. Russell. I work hard to please God. And in so doing, generally speaking, Mr. Russell and Pastor are pleased with me. A person who's hired to do a job is called an employee. So class, the one who does the hiring is called the employer, and the person who does the work for the boss is the employee. That's probably going to be most of us, at least starting out, right? You get that part-time job at Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, wherever you work, right? That, again, by the way, all work is noble, right? That's Puritan work ethic. Have you talked about that in history class yet?
No.
Okay, you're going to get to that point, but the idea that all work is noble, right? Work was a gift of God. It's not something to be shunned. It's not something to be scared of, right? God told Adam in the garden to keep the garden, to take care of the garden before the fall. Work existed before sin. Work isn't a consequence of sin. Now, pain, the thorns of the ground, the sweat of the brow, the difficulty of work, okay, that's part of the curse, but work itself is a gift from God. I have found in my life when I get in a rut, I just get, I'm just not mentally focused, or, something's really bothering me, Notre Dame loses again, that kind of thing, whatever. Whatever's got you down, relationships, struggles, whatever. Hard work is an antidote to a lot of different mental struggles people go through. And we see a rise in mental issues in America today. We also see a drop in work ethic. I don't think that's a coincidence. So understand work is noble. And even if it's at McDonald's, whether it's Burger King or maybe Chick-fil-A, we might look at Chick-fil-A and say, that's the better job. They'll probably have better coworkers, maybe better management, I would think, perhaps. But all work is noble and you can make a difference, right? I remember I was at Burger King one time, and because they got the good play places in town. And so we're at Burger King. I don't go there for the food, but they got the good play places, and I have small children. And there's this one girl behind the counter, and she's so polite and just so efficient at the register. It's almost like, wow, she's a really good employee. How about that? And then a little bit later on, she's sweeping the floor, and she's clearing tables, and she's back behind the register, taking care of people, just constantly busily working, while her coworkers are sitting like slobs in a booth on their phones. I'm like, wow. So I left a review for management to make sure they knew about this. They're like, she was fantastic. What a testimony, right? What a testimony. People take notice of you, and as a Christian, that your testimony can shine. So again, don't look at, okay, if the only job you can get is McDonald's, oh, it's not worth having. Well, you can still learn a lot about hard work, gather some basic skills, get a little bit on the resume, make some money, and have a testimony. Now, you don't work, though, just for the sake of working, though work is good. We work so we can make money. Again, what do we call money we make by working? Income. Now, there's different ways you can be paid. Notice here, not all employees are paid the same way. Some employees sign a contract that guarantees they may set annual salary. Salary is a set amount of money that you're guaranteed to make. Doesn't matter how much you work, how little you work, unless you do so bad you get fired. You get the work done, you get paid this much. It's a set amount. There's no overtime pay. Your teachers get paid salary because the school cannot afford to pay overtime pay. All right? This booklet, I think I mentioned this yesterday, took about 30 hours to put together. That wasn't hours I was on the clock. That was weekend hours. But I want you to be prepared for life. Right? I love you that much. My children are going to be in this class in a few years. I want them to know this stuff. So I spent the time, not paid above and beyond, just because I want you to have this. I want you to know this. And I plan to use it for like a lot of years. All right, so in the long run, it won't be that much. Just for this first year, it feels like a lot. But that was not paid time necessarily. I get paid a certain amount, whether I stay and work 30 extra hours or not. Okay, that's a salary. Most management positions are paid a salary. Now, there's upside to salary. You don't have to wonder how much are you going to make this month. you can plan your expenses a little bit better. You don't have to worry about what if they tell me not to come in today because they don't have enough work for me. When you're salary, you know how much you're getting. And usually you get paid a little more than the average Joe if you're getting paid a salary. So that helps, okay? But again, salary is a set amount. Now, it's not paid once a year. That would be problematic, right? You can imagine how quickly you might run out of money if you're not careful. So salary is usually paid either once a month, usually the first of the month, or it's paid twice a month. So for instance, here we get paid on the 5th and the 20th. Some places get paid 1st and 15th. Some people pay weekly salary. That's pretty rare. So usually it's played out either monthly or semi-monthly. You see that term there. Now, lower end employees and your fast food workers get paid this way, get paid what are called wages. See that term there? That's a term you should be familiar with from the Bible even, right? Wages. Wages refers to pay per hour. The more you work, the more you make. Okay, so wages, hourly wages. And we're going to talk about this tomorrow, are paid extra if they work over 40 hours a week. The government's decided 40 hours is where people should be working. If you work more than that, then you should get paid a little extra if you're an hourly employee. So if you get paid a set amount, class, that's salary. If you get paid for every hour you work, that's called wages. Now, there are other ways you can get paid. People who work in service vocations, like a waitress or a waiter, a barista at the coffee shop, your barber or your beautician or hairstylist, whatever you call the lady who does hair stuff. Anyway, those people who do nails, whatever, they get paid what are called tips. How many have heard of that before? Yes, yes. And so it's important to make sure you leave a good tip for people who are in service vocations. Now, they don't just get paid tips, they also get paid an hourly wage as well. So they get paid, this is a certain hourly wage, plus they get their tips. But here's how it usually works. Usually their wage is lower than minimum wage because they're expected to make really good tips to make up the difference. That incentivizes them to be really good. Instead of, somebody coming over here, here's your food, slam it down on the table, Hey, could I have some more napkins? Here you go, catch. Okay, we're not doing that, right? We don't want to do that because you're not going to get a good tip, right? And so they want their employees, their waiters and waitresses and people like that to do a really good job. And so they pay them a little bit less, expecting tips to make up the difference. Also, this isn't as common today, but there are some jobs that get what are called piecework wages. And you get paid for every item that you produce. I dated a girl in college whose dad was a machine shop person. And so different companies would say, hey, I need 1,000 of these parts, or I need a bunch of these parts. And for every part he made, he got paid a certain amount. So again, assembly line workers might get paid along this line. Okay, for every item you get done today, you get paid a certain amount. Again, not as prevalent as it used to be, but piecework wages as well. Now, there's a couple terms you need to understand here. There is the money you actually work for and earn, and then there's the money you actually get to keep. And they're not always the same. In fact, they're almost never the same. The money you actually earn is called gross wages or gross pay. You see that term there? Not gross as in, ew, gross, but if you want to remember, it's gross that you don't actually get to keep all of it. All right, so maybe that'll help you remember. Gross pay is what you actually earn. However, what you'll notice when you get that first job is you'll have your gross pay, and then they'll have an item called deductions, taxes, and other things. For instance, if you work a job that gives you an employee benefit like health insurance from your employer, they might take out a certain amount of your pay to help cover the health insurance. So it's sort of a benefit. All right, different types of things, deductions. And so what you actually end up with, net pay. Net pay. Think of it this way. Imagine if there's, anyone ever actually fished with a net? Anyone ever actually fished with a net? I've only ever done like pole fishing. But if you fish with a net, right, you scoop up a whole bunch of water, but the water flows through, and supposedly all that stays in are the fish, specifically the right size fish, right? The little bitty fish, they will go through the net in some cases, and only the big fish stay, right? You put the net down there, and all the deductions flow out like water and little fish, and all you get to keep is the net pay. It's what's left after your union dues and savings plans and taxes and Social Security and all those deductions go through. Questions on all that? All right, let's take a look at some problems that will hopefully help us to understand this better. Make sure you have paper and pencil at the ready. Read problem 1 for us if you would, Jalen.
Brian Gray receives $11.25 per hour. He find his gross pay for a 40-hour work week.
All right, so a 40-hour work week, class, means he works how many hours? 40 hours. Everybody that makes sense? And he's getting paid how much per hour? $11.25. So what do you suppose we have to do to figure this out, class? Just multiply. At your seats, go ahead and multiply. Figure out what his gross pay would be. Now again, this isn't how much he actually gets. This is how much he worked hard for and earned. Take a moment, multiply it out. Remember, you can drop the zero or hang the zero to make your work a little easier. And we'll get our answer from Griffin. What you got?
I'm trying to make sure. $450.
$450. How many had $450? All right, again, hang the zero, just multiply the 4 through, and then put the 0 back on before you boink, boink your 2 decimal places back on. So again, if you had $45,000, that's a lot of money in 1 week. But you just scratch your decimal, so be careful there. $450. Do want to make sure we use a dollar sign, right? Want to make sure we use a dollar sign. And of course, if things don't work out evenly, we always round money to how many decimal places, class? 2. Now here, you can either write $450 because it came out evenly, or if you wanted to say it like this, you could. I'm lazy. I generally don't do cents unless there actually are cents to have to worry about. Let's look at number 2. And go ahead and read that for us, if you would, Corey.
Zach Hollis receives $30,132 annually. If he is paid monthly, how much does he earn each month?
Now, if we know that's how much he's going to get in a year, he probably works what, class? Wages or salary?
Salary.
He's probably salary, if we already know how much he's going to get. Now, he's paid every month, right? If that's his annual, what does annual mean, class?
Yearly.
Yearly, right? So for the year, he's going to get $30,132. He's paid every month, though. So what should we do to figure out his monthly pay?
Divide by 12.
At your seats, divide by 12. Let's see how much he gets every month. $30,000 plus a year, but what does that equate to each month? And those of us who have our 12 division tables memorized, or 12 multiplication tables memorized, working through it quickly. Some of us maybe a little slower on it. That's okay. A few people have that answer. Corey's got it. Corey, what did you get for his monthly salary?
$2,511.
$2,511. How many had that? Worked out evenly. Good. Excellent questions on that. Go and look at number 3 and read that one for us, if you would. Joel.
Jillian works at the hair salon. She is paid.
Are we on number 3? Hey,
No.
You're on the homework side of the page. Let's go to the side that we've actually been working on this whole time, where I've been talking through. Make sure you're paying attention. How about number 3?
Fred Johnson receives an annual salary of $38,500. If he is paid semi-monthly, his gross pay each paycheck.
What does semi-monthly mean, class?
Twice a month.
Twice a month. So he gets paid 2 times a month. So how many paychecks is Fred getting? 24 paychecks. So if his annual salary is $38,500, what would we have to do to find his paycheck amount? Divide by 24 this time. So paid monthly, we would divide by 12. Semi-monthly, we'd have to divide by 24. Take a moment to do that. And it doesn't work out evenly, does it?
No.
So we've got a couple options here. When it doesn't work out, the best way to approach this is to do what, class?
Add more zeros.
Add a decimal and put a couple more zeros. Or there is another option for this particular problem. How many of you worked your way down? You got a 4 that was kind of left over when the problem was done. You could make a fraction. So Joel, we know that 24 would go into 38 just once, right? We subtract 24, we get 14. Bring down a 5. 24 would go into 145. Well, 2 goes into 14 7 times. But there's this 4 that's kind of in the way, so it probably doesn't work 7 times. That's the way I thought it through. I said, well, 7 probably doesn't quite fit. Let me try 6 instead. 6 worked out beautifully, got 144. Subtract only got 1. Brought down a 0, like, wait, 24 can't go into 10? 0 times. Still have 10. Bring down another 0. Okay, it goes in 4 times, that's 96. This 4 left over, class, if I wanted to, I could think of this as 4 24ths. Now, this won't work every time, but what is 4 24ths reduced to?
1/6.
1/6, and we know what 1/6 is as a decimal without doing the division. 0.16 repeating, right? So if we wanted to do it that way, we could cheat the system. Now remember, we still have to cut it off at 2 decimal places. The 6 is going to round up here, class, to a 7. So we know we're going to get $1,604.17. However, that doesn't always work. So sometimes, Joel, what we need to do is add the decimal above and below and bring down another 0. How many times would 24 go into 40, Joel? Just once, right? So when we subtract the 24, we're going to get a 16. Bring down another 0. How many times would 24 go into 160? Well, earlier, Joel, when we did a 6, it was 144. Would that fit in 160? Yeah. So let's try it again. We already know 6 times 24 is 144 from when we did it earlier. And if we subtract there, we get 16 again. You can't even see it on the board now. It's so tiny. Well, notice what's going to keep happening. If I bring down the 0, it's going to be another 160. So it's going to be another 6, which is another 144, which is another 16, which is another 160. You get the idea? And so that's how, even if we didn't know the fraction decimal, we could figure it out. Now, we don't need the extra digits. We just need enough to know how to round it. How many had, even before we went through it, how many had the $1,604.17? All right, questions on that? All right, just a good review of division there. Number 4, go ahead and read that for us if you would now. Kirsten.
Maggie McCrary is a dental hygienist. She is paid $45.80 for each cleaning. She averages 8 cleanings per day and works 4.5 days each week. How much does she usually earn each week?
All right, now here, she's not being paid wages, is she? Nor is she getting paid, at least on hourly wages. She's not getting paid salary. This is kind of like what, class? Piecework.
Yeah,
Piecework, right? But she's not getting paid for a piece she completes, but I guess kind of a mouth is a piece. Mouth. Anyway, and for every mouth she cleans, right, she's getting paid $45.80. Now, how many cleanings does she do? Well, it says each day she does 8 cleanings on average. How many days does it say she works?
4.5.
So the first thing we need to do, class, is figure out how many cleanings does she get done in a week. Set your seats. 8 cleanings a day, 4.5 days worked. I guess she leaves early on Fridays, probably. That's my experience with medical offices. They usually close early on Fridays. How many cleanings per week? Elaine?
36.
36. How many got the 36? 4.5 times 8. Right? And again, the 4.5, real quick, make that an improper fraction. 9 halves times 8, cancel, and there's your 36. Now, if she does 36 cleanings, and every cleaning she gets paid how much again, Kirsten?
$45.80.
What would we have to do to figure out how much she earns in a week, class?
Multiply.
Multiply. Now again, is this going to be her gross pay or net pay, class?
Net pay. Or no.
This is gross pay. This is what she's earning. We haven't gotten to what she's actually getting to take home, but when we multiply by the $45.80, we get her gross pay. How much she has earned before the government and other deductions get involved. I I did mention calculators, by the way, in the last video. We're not using them yet. We will get to them in a few lessons. We'll have some opportunities to use those. So if you don't have one today, that's fine. You shouldn't be using one right now. We're still working on some basic math practice here with multiplication and division and addition and such. But we will get to the point where we can use them. And when we multiply, yes. All right. Did we get $1,648.80? Now, strategy tip, right? Again, thinking quizzes, tests. What should you do on a quiz or test? Show the work, right? Show me the work so that way, even if you get a multiplication error, whatever, it's okay. As long as I know that you know what you're doing. You know you should multiply 36 by $45.80, and you figured out that there were 36 cleanings. Well, let's take a look at number 5 and read that for us, if you would, Ben.
Jason Wells does piecework in a factory. He averages 87 pieces in a day at $1.40 per piece. What are his average earnings for a 5-day week?
We have no clue what these pieces are, whatever his job is, but he averages 87 of this thing per day. He gets paid how much per piece, class?
$1.40.
$1.40. So what are we going to need to do?
Multiply.
By
87.
87. Let's figure out how much he gets paid per day, first of all. $1.40 a piece, 87 pieces. Let's figure out what that's going to be in a day. Of course, you can hang the 0 if you want to. I want to. But it doesn't ask how much he earns in a day. Class, it asks how much does he earn in a week, in a 5-day work week. So now what do we need to do, class?
Multiply.
Multiply that by 5. And Jalen's got an answer for us. $609. How many have the 609? You say I was on the right track. I didn't get it yet, but I was right there. I knew what I was doing. All right. Any questions on the process here? Notice it's a lot of multiplication. Okay, unless you know the big number, then it tends to be division. Let's go to number 6. Go ahead and read that for us, if you would, Luciana.
Missy Barnes received $5.75 per hour.
Cents, $75.75.
Per hour, plus tips as a waitress. Last week she worked 27 hours and made $309.15 in tips.
There you go.
What were the total earnings for the week?
There we go. Good. $309.15 a day. Okay, so she makes tips and she makes an hourly wage. What should we do to figure out her wages? The tips we know, right? The tips, in fact, we can write this down. Tips were what again, class?
$309.15.
$309.15. Okay, so that's her tips, but she makes wages. What do we need to do to figure out what her wages are? Michael?
Multiply 27 by $5.75.
There we go. We understand how the hourly wage works. Hours times hourly wage gives you how much she makes. So let's do that. Did we get the 155.25 when we multiplied? But we're not done yet, are we? That's her hourly wages. That's how much they pay her to be the waitress there. But she also makes more money from being a good waitress. And she makes another $309.15. So what do we have to do to finish out the problem, Joel? Add them together. At your seats, do that if you haven't already. And hey, this isn't bad for working 27 hours. Not bad pay at all. She must be a good waitress. How much does she make, Griffin?
$464.50.
Oh, so close, so close, so close. Elaine?
Just $464.40.
40 cents. Yeah, when you add that up, carry the one, it's just a 4. So $464.40 in the week for 27 hours worth of work. How many had that answered there? All right, questions on that? Yes, sir, question.
For money, can we say and between the decimals?
Yeah, the decimals where you say and. So you say this many dollars, this is read and then you read this many cents. Let's actually say this together as a class so we can be good with the way we read our money. $464.40. Again, $464.40. Good. Let's take a look at number 7. Now let's get into the net pay. That's the nasty part of it all, is what you don't get to keep. But anyway, number 7, read about Brooke for us if you would. Let's see. Kirsten, have you read yet?
I have.
You have. Joel's read. Elaine has not? Elaine, read for us.
Brooke Adams has a gross pay of $323.18 each week. A total of $84.09 is deducted from her weekly income. What is her net pay?
Does that seem like a lot? $84 taken out of her paycheck. I saw a video. It was one of those little YouTube shorts of this girl. She worked her first job. She got her first paycheck. She opened it up. I guess she wanted to record herself for some reason. And she screamed when she saw the deductions. They took this much? Yeah, Uncle Sam takes that much. Anyway, so she earned how much, class?
$323.18.
Thank you, Kirsten. Class, we're all looking at number 7. How much did she earn?
$323.18.
There we go, $323.18. But the government and or other deductions, presumably mostly the government though, took how much from her, class?
$84.09.
There we go. And so again, it's not thievery. The government is authorized to tax, right? Even Jesus said to his disciples and to the Pharisees, you render unto Caesar's that which is Caesar's, right? Caesar is charging the tax, you pay the tax. Okay, so we don't fight the tax. That's not biblical, but we don't have to like it either. And so, how much does she actually get to take home? What is her take-home pay called? What, class?
Net
pay.
Net pay. Find her net pay. What do we have to do?
Subtract.
Just a subtraction. Just take away what was deducted, subtract that from her gross pay, and what is her net pay? What do we get for the net pay? And we'll get this from, let's see, who haven't I called on for a while? I just read it. I called on you. Let's see, Luciana read. I think everybody's got to participate. Just call it out, class. How much did you get?
$239.09.
And 9 cents. There we go. $239.09. How many had that answer? $239.09. Good. All right, number 8. Read this one for us, if you would, Michael.
Michelle Todd has a gross pay of $574 each week. Of her gross pay, 23% is deducted from her paycheck each week. What is her net pay?
Now, there's 2 different ways you can work this. One way you could work it, class, is to take 23% of,
$574.
figure out what that is. And then with that, we do what?
Subtract.
Subtract it away from the gross pay, right? That's one way to do it. Or, think back. You remember when we talked about discounts and sale price? I said this, if you get 40% off, that means you don't have to pay 40%, you only pay 60%. Well, we can take that same logic here. If 23% is deducted, class, she doesn't get 23% of her paycheck. She does get what percent?
70?
Not exactly 70.
77%.
77%. Good, Ben. 77% is what she gets to keep. And if you do it that way, it's faster. You just multiply 77% times the paycheck. Both ways work. At your seats, do one of those, whichever way makes the most sense to you. She earned $574, 23% of that paycheck goes to taxes and other deductions. So what's the net pay? By the way, deductions can be like investing in, say, retirement, right? Having to pay deducted for retirement. So it's not always Uncle Sam. This seems a little high for Uncle Sam, but anyone multiply 23%? Did anyone do it that way? Michael, how much is the 23%, first of all?
0.23.
Well, yeah, okay, but when you multiply that by the 574, like how much is the actual deduction amount?
$132.02.
All right, making sure, double checking. Yes, that's what I had also. $132.02 is how much is deducted. Then we can subtract that from the 574 to get our answer. How many just did, hey, if she lost 23% to deductions, she gets to keep 77%. You just did that way. All right, and what do we get? It's going to be the same answer, regardless of the way we approach it. What is that answer, though, Corey?
$441.98.
Good. How many had $441.98 for your answer? Are there questions on that? Anyone say, I don't quite understand how you did that or what? Yes, ma'am.
What did you say it was?
$441.98 is the final answer. And again, two different ways to approach it, just whatever way you feel is easier. Yes, ma'am.
I know we're gonna have to have homework work in class,
Right.
But are we gonna have to have like classwork, the work in class the next day?
No, not necessarily. All right, let's take a look at number 9. Almost finished here. Number 9, Paula Riddell charges $6 an hour to babysit before 9 p.m., $8 per hour after 9 p.m. So the later she works, the more she charges. She babysits from 6 to 11. How many girls in here babysit? How many do babysitting? Maybe will in the days ahead when you get a little older. Stay with me real quick here. So she goes from 6 to 11. How many of those hours are before 9, class? 3. From 6 to 9, that's 3 hours. That's before. So $6 an hour, how much is that, class? $18. Okay, then how many after 9 o'clock? 2. Guys, she goes 9 to 11 as well. So 6 to 11 is 6 to 9, and then 9 to 11. So 2 more hours. That's at $8 an hour. So class, that's $16. How much does babysitter make? $34. Guys, she gets to make all of it, right? She gets to keep it all. Don't subtract there. Last thing, number 10, real quick. Caitlin Stokely works part-time job at Chick-fil-A. She's paid $8.50 an hour. 1 week, she works 14 hours. I need my fast math people to come through for me here. What's her gross pay? $8.50 an hour, 14 hours. Call it when you've got it. 119. Elaine, the first one with it. $119. All of you write that number down, even if you didn't have time to get there. She earns gross pay $119. But it says in number 2, how much was withheld, class?
$16.73.
$16.73. So to find her net pay, class, we've got to subtract. All right, fast math people, subtract $16.73. What is her net pay? $102.27. $102.27. All right, we'll talk about this more tomorrow. Your homework for this evening is to do page 2, and that is the back side of page 1, the homework section there. A lot of practice with basic algebra, signed numbers. Want to keep those skills sharp even as we work through the section on money. Also some percent problems, give you a good review there. We'll look at all of that tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and you are dismissed.